Good morning. Good morning. Java Delight will uplift you. Stay tuned. The show is about to begin. Grab your coffee. Stay tuned. This show is about to begin.
Good morning, Java Light family and community. How are you all doing today?
Good morning. Awesome. Always glad to see your bright, shiny face.
Good morning, Shana. Good morning, Stuart. Krista.
Hello,
Good
hello.
morning. Hey, Krista. How are you doing? How's the UK doing today? Here is.
Are you dressing up for your Day of the Dead?
No, I'm not. Oh, by the way, yeah, happy Day of the Dead, everyone. You know, like here in where I live in Mexico, the northern area. Well, not only the TJ, but all the northern areas in Mexico, they don't celebrate it as they do in the southern. Like we do eat the bread because it's so good, but we don't do as they do in the southern areas of Mexico, where they go to the graveyards and they literally stay there and do everything there, and they decorate. We just some places they do an altar and stuff like that, but they don't dress up or paint their faces or like they do in the southern areas in Mexico. But still, I believe that even though we don't celebrate it as they do in southern Mexico, we still get to uh, commemorate and remember the people that we love that have passed and that is no longer with us. I think it's a good time to remember them and to celebrate life and to appreciate what we have and the family that we still have with us, while remembering those that are not with us anymore. So I really like that.
What traditions do you guys have that you're doing today, even though you don't celebrate it? What's something that you do every year on this day?
Well, I know that, for example, they go on this day, they go to the graveyards and they literally stay there, I think, the whole day, and they eat there and they listen to music, and they cover all the graveyard with this type of flower that is very typical for this date, and they literally spend the whole day at the graveyard.
Awesome.
That's what they do. Well, here, I won't do much besides eating bread of the dead.
Dead
but
bread.
but yeah, it's pretty much what they do. Oh, with hot chocolate, which is awesome for this cold, because it got very cold like yesterday, and it's gonna get colder and colder.
We are dying. It feels so hot. Yeah, it's 32 degrees, which is over 80 Fahrenheit. It is so hot in this house that you sometimes struggle and you're just like, oh, I need fresh air. I need to go stand outside. It's too hot.
Yeah, it's hot there, so that's weird. God, it's super hot there. Hey, Kevin,
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
and very cold here, and the crazy thing that, like, the weather in TJ here, it changes like drastically. Like it could be like hot and then rainy the same day and then cold. So it's changing all the time. So
The weather, yeah.
It's kind of like San Diego.
yeah, it's very similar. Well, San Diego is only 30 minutes away, so it's very we share.
Cold. It's not cold in San Diego. I mean, really?
Well, the thing is that here where I live, it has a lot of mountains, and some houses are like in the mountain areas. Like for example, I live in the mountains, so it gets colder up here than other parts in the city.
Okay.
So, so yes, they populated. I always tell people they populated everything here in TG because you won't see like wasted space. Literally, you drive around the city and everything is populated. You see the mountains and very high up, it's very populated. So it's just
Oh,
it got very populated very quick.
that's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Speaking of mountains, that's where Uncle Bob is freezing his butt off.
We're in San Diego.
No,
We're
Colorado.
in Colorado. That's where
Oh,
you were just now
Yeah,
with
so
your
when
produce
Fernando's
sharing.
talking about it being cold, Bob's probably going, screw you, it's freaking freezing up here.
it's colder here. Yeah.
I was
But
just
the
reading some
weather is
of
extreme everywhere because last week we had 7 days of rain. It was overcast the whole week last week. You couldn't dry washing, you couldn't do anything. Thunderstorms, everything, and this week we're dying of heat. This week there is no clouds in the sky, nothing. It is so humid and it's just horrible. So everywhere the weather is just not normal.
Yeah, I think it's changing. I think the weather is changing
Hey
everywhere.
Britt. Morning, Ryan.
Good morning, Brian Tracy.
Good morning, Britt.
Brit
Looking forward to
Brad.
talking to you a little later on this morning.
Don't
Oh,
you don't you struggle to wake up when it's so cold, so early in the morning?
yes, I do struggle because I'm super warm in my bed and then I'm like, do I want to wake up?
I know the feeling. That's the most horrible is waking up in the morning when it's winter and you don't want to get out of bed and it's still dark outside. It snowed on me in Michigan.
They're calling for snow today or tomorrow. Oh
That
no!
sounds so pretty. I've seen snow twice in my life. Does it snow in Tijuana?
Not snow, but it sometimes we get hazel.
Okay, I've
Hazel.
got
Yeah.
Like
hail.
No,
fog?
no, not hazel. Hail.
Hail. It's
Hail.
like the
Oh, okay,
frozen.
hail.
You
We
know,
also
I
get that.
I don't know why. Good morning, Sherry. I don't know why. I every time I want to think of hail, I always think of hazel, and I'm like, no, not hazel. I
But
told
that's a good way to remember it.
hazel, hail. I always mess those up. And sometimes when I want to say hazel, I say hail. So I'm like, oh, what? People are like, what? Hail?
Brian says if it snows in Tijuana, it means Alfro is over. What was the hottest that it's been in Tijuana? What is like the highest temperature you get there on a good day?
The highest temperature. Uh, I think it's been the 40 Celsius, which
Jeez, that is hot.
I don't know what is in Fahrenheit, but I think it's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a
But
lot.
it was like historically high. It was not that easy. You will get that weather like every day. So it's just very, very weird when you get temperatures that high. But there was at one time where we got to that point that it was super hot because like we have three around 3 hours from here. There's the desert,
Okay.
so it gets very very hot and cold over there. So
We've got the bushveld not far away from here where all the wild animals and that like Bella Bella and those places. And there on a nice open skies sunny day, it can also run up to about 40-45 degrees.
Really?
Yeah, the weather is terrible. Even in the shade, there's shade because it's got like this, they call it a cameel doring, which is a giraffe thorn if you translate it directly, but it's not the tree's name that looks like little umbrellas. So if you watched Lion King, those ones that's on Lion King,
Right?
it's yeah, those trees. Even in the shade, it's like extremely, extremely hot there as well.
Wow, that's crazy.
Wow. So how far was that away from you, Ilse?
That's about also about 3 or 4 hours drive, but it's not like the desert. There's green and there's animals and
Yeah, that's like
everything.
the savannah or something.
Yes, that's where most people come hunt when they hunt in South Africa. Is yeah by Bella Bella, which is about 3 4 hours drive away from us where we live.
Yeah, where I'm moving up into South Dakota, it's like right near a couple of national parks where they have the buffalo or the bison is the real term. Um, and it's only 15-minute drive from the town that I'm in to this area. And if you drive on the highway, almost every day you can see the bison out there, and there. So you see these big bison, and then on the ground you've got the oh man, what do you call those groundhog? Not groundhogs, but like groundhogs. Jesus, Brett. Anyhow, you got these huge creatures, and then you got these little creatures that like you'd think they'd get stepped on, but they learn to live together. Then you got the giant elk out there, and the deer, and it's amazing because you're just 15 minutes away from all that stuff.
I can imagine, and now with the weather and everything dying and all the leaves changing and the animals that you can see easier and everything. I think
Prairie
it's
dogs, there. Thank you, Brian.
what is a prairie dog? I've
Jesus.
never in my life heard of that.
Prairie dogs.
Yes, do
Yeah,
you know what it
prairie
is?
dogs.
No, I don't. I don't think I heard. I ever heard of such a thing. Prairie
No,
dogs.
have I.
Yeah. um,
I just sent you a cool story. You might want to read. Yeah, I don't trust your story, Brian. Sorry.
Sorry. That can be anything. It can be anything. So you need to first go
Ye-
check and then decide.
yeah, Brian. He's
Okay.
just trying to get revenge for what I did to him yesterday.
What did you do?
oh, what you do to
What did you
Brian?
do?
I sent him a weird picture that he didn't enjoy.
Oh, but it's fun when you can have a relationship like that, jokey relationship with someone. It's fun.
Yeah,
And
so
Kanada's right. It's like a meerkat. Prairie dogs are kind of like meerkats.
meerkat.
I've seen a
Yes.
meerkat. We've got meerkats, and it does not look like a dog.
No.
Not
Prairie
even
dogs don't look like
close.
a dog either. Prairie dogs look a lot like meerkats, but I think meerkats are a little bit skinnier and taller than
Yeah,
the
they stay like
groundhogs.
that.
Yeah,
It's
and
like
that's what
Simone on Lion King. Again, we come back to Lion King
yeah,
today.
groundhogs do kind of the same thing. They have they come out and they got the ones that are kind of your scouts and paying attention to what's going on, but they're a little bit shorter and fatter, I think, because they also live in some areas when it's colder too.
Oh yes,
But
I just checked what Brian sent me. It's not a weird thing. It's actually cute. It says first black rhino ever born at Potter Park Zoo is being relocated to California.
oh wow.
The first black rhino ever born at Potter Park Zoo in Lansing will be relocated to a California zoo. Potter Park Zoo is hosting a farewell party for the 2-year-old rhino. Jolly was born in Lansing on December 25, 2019, a milestone event for the park as only 50 black rhinos are cared for at Association of Zoos and Aquariums facilities. He stayed in Lansing for 2 years. In early 2021, a breeding match for Jolly was found by the ASAS Species Survival Plan. Later this fall, a young female from Cleveland Metro Park Zoo will meet Jolly at their new home, the Living Desert Zoo. That's awesome.
That is so cool.
Not talking about rhinos, like I think very important that they're saving these rhinos, because I was talking with my friend Tony, and we're trying to raise awareness for the rhinos, because there's not many rhinos left.
Right.
So
Yeah, the
rescuing
rhinos.
rescuing them and saving them, it's a priority before they become extinct.
Some of them already is extinct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's some
exactly.
species that are extinct already.
Yes, I know that a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if it's the black rhino. I think it's the black rhino or the white rhino. I'm not sure which one it was, but there was a pair in South Africa that was a mom and a dad, and then they passed away. So they can't make any more. That was the last pair, breeding pair, and one of them or both of them died. I'm not too sure. I think both of them, and that's why they were the only ones that's left.
Hey,
They
we
do.
need we
They
need
poach
Uncle
them
Bob to send
illegally.
us some pictures in his bathing suit as he's enjoying the hot tropical weather of Colorado.
Good morning, Bob. How are you doing?
Hello.
Good
So
morning, Sir Bob of the Frozen Rockies.
I think that Bob, yeah, Bob's probably got frozen Rocky Mountain oysters now.
I just want to quickly close my door, yeah, because the wind's a bit hectic. Just give me two
Go
seconds.
ahead. Yes, they do. They do poach rhinos very badly. Uh, I don't remember exactly. Like every 24 hours, I believe, a rhino is poached, and it's not very pretty, and it's bloody, and they suffer a lot. So it's
They
I was
do.
I was watching a video that my friend shared on his Instagram, and I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't watch the whole thing because it's very 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 sad how they get to do it, and they literally let them there to die. Like they cut their horn and then let them to die,
No, they
and
do not care.
then yeah, it's very sad. So uh, you'll be hearing from him sometime this month. He'll be here telling us something that we are planning with him. So so it's gonna be great. It's
Because he was
exciting.
on the show before, right?
Yeah,
Yes, he
yeah,
was on the show.
yeah, like a month and a half ago or
Yeah,
something like
something
that.
like
No,
that.
isn't it
Yeah.
more? I was in that other place still, so it's about 2 months.
Two
I
months.
was
Okay,
still living in the other place, yeah, so it's a little while ago.
2 months. Wow, yeah, time flies.
It does, yeah.
We put the
I'm
Christmas
thinking
tree yesterday.
it's the 1st of November. I think I started my first show in June.
June.
So it's already that long, 6 months almost, if it's not more.
Wow, in 3 more months, it's like you'd have given birth to a baby, the baby of Delight Cafe.
Oh my gosh.
No thanks, no babies for me.
I,
I've got enough
I
babies.
saw that look on your face. It was like, what the hell are you talking about?
I have
Yeah, no thanks. No, thank you.
I have a question for the audience and you guys. When do you guys start decorating for Christmas? Is it November 1st? Or is it later? When do you guys start?
I don't do Christmas decorations.
You don't do Christmas decoration?
No, I'm not really affiliated with um Christmas on that day and things like that. It's not about that for me. So my children's birthdays are more important to me than celebrating a Christmas where the Bible and how people talk just contradict each other. So I don't celebrate Christmas myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we used to, when we used to, I would put up my tree on the 1st of November and then take it off on the 25th of July just to put it there because it's standing there. I never take it off. You just leave it there until, oh, okay, maybe I must put this away.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that they started playing Christmas movies like 2 weeks before Halloween. I was like, holy cow. Yeah, you go and watch, like, because when I'm in the hotel, you have a limited number of TV stations.
Yeah.
One of them is the Hallmark Channel. And every movie's from the past, 2 weeks that I've been there have been Christmas movies. I was like, holy cow, before Halloween, you're already putting on your Christmas stuff. Pretty soon, it'll just be 365 days of preparing for Christmas.
December 24th, but only for our son. Cool.
Oh, that's
Shana
awesome.
decorates after Thanksgiving. That's good. Like there's some people that I know and miss us sometimes. Like we just put the tree yesterday. We haven't decorated everything. Like we have a lot of things, but we literally just put the tree yesterday. We still need to decorate the tree and put everything in the house. But I think we'll be doing it this weekend. Uh, we really love Christmas, and for me, Christmas it's more about being together with the family. So that's what I care about, and I really enjoy Christmas because it's a time when we get to spend more time with the family together, and we gather, with my grandma and the whole family, and we eat tamales and all this awesome food. So it's a good moment to be together. And
It's nice when you have family that you can do Christmas holidays with and visit with and everything. Then it's nice. Then it's nice celebrating anything.
yes, but before Christmas is Thanksgiving, which is true. I forgot about Thanksgiving, which it's for you guys in the U.S. It's the fourth. Is it the fourth Thursday of November?
I always thought it used to be the third, but I guess it is the fourth this year. Let's see. So, no, it's the third, I guess, because it's the 25th. My dad's birthday is also on the 25th of November, so sometimes he gets to celebrate his birthday on Thanksgiving Day, and sometimes he doesn't. This year he does, so he gets to be the biggest turkey that we celebrate on Thanksgiving.
Say, I don't have any plans for Thanksgiving or Christmas this year. I won't see my family until next year. Maybe.
Bob will have to see if I get up there by that time. At least maybe can do Christmas in Hot Springs. I'll actually drive down there and pick you up.
That sounds like fun.
I believe Thanksgiving is only a U.S. and Canada holiday, right?
Well, Canada is a different time of it. They already had their Thanksgiving. It's like in October or something.
Yeah, it already passed like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, because I saw a Canadian friend and he posted on Facebook like, "Hey, Thanksgiving dinner," and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I remembered about that." When I was working for a Canadian company, that they were like off for the Thanksgiving holiday in October, and I was like, "Oh, yeah." Kevin is saying, "Yeah, for Canada, our Thanksgiving is in October." Yes. I remember that they were saying, "Oh, we're gonna celebrate Thanksgiving," and I was like, "Oh, in October." And yeah, or Canada, in Canada, it's in October, and but I believe only Canada and the U.S. celebrate that holiday because we don't celebrate it here in Mexico. Like
We
there
don't.
are some people that do because they have family in the U.S. or they used to live in the U.S. and now live here, and they acquire that holiday and they celebrate it. We used to have friends that were from the U.S. and they used to make a big Thanksgiving thing, and they would
Right.
invite us over. But yeah, here is not celebrated. Only a few people that celebrated that live there in the U.S. I mean,
It's
work
also
in the U.S. and live here.
it's
Yeah,
also
the
not a big
interesting thing about Thanksgiving is that, it's kind of built on a history that was created as opposed to reality. So Thanksgiving here, it's supposed to be when the pilgrims were here, and then they celebrated, a dinner with the Native Americans or the indigenous and all that kind of stuff. But the reality of what happened during that time frame was not so Thanksgiving worthy. And I think that as time's gone on, again, Thanksgiving, Halloween, Christmas, they've become so commercialized. They're ingrained now in society more for the commercial aspect than they are for the anything else. And a lot of what they were built on isn't necessarily always true.
No, I can understand. So they you said that they broke into your car. Where did they break into your car?
Yeah, I had just flown back from South Dakota, literally, and stopped by my house, which is where my mother, father, brother, and his girlfriend live, and I don't. But I have like my safes there, so usually when I travel, I drop some guns off in my safe there because they're bigger safes and nobody's gonna get into those. So I stopped by the house and picked up my guns, and I had my computer case with me for when I was traveling because I, was still really coming back after getting off the plane. And I swung by a casino to grab something to eat, which is like 4 blocks from my house. Parked in the garage at like 9:30 at night and came out at midnight and went to open my car, and I was like, wow, this is different because I used the remote and and it was not like it was locked. And then I looked inside the car and I saw that all my stuff was taken. So they stole a backpack, and the police are most concerned about this backpack because it had 3 guns in it. It had 2 9mm and a more powerful pistol in there. And then they stole my computer case, which is like got everything that I've done for the past 20 years in that computer. And that's the one that was most important to me. So I called the police and I went into the security, and they took a look at their cameras because, supposedly Vegas and these hotels have a lot of cameras, but they're like, oh no, where you parked your car was kind of like in a blind spot, so we really can't see your truck. And the only thing that they were able to find is there was a white Chevy Suburban that came across from a parking lot of a shopping mall that was across the street. And then it parked right next to my car. And what they did is they popped the lock on the passenger side of the car, got in the car. They actually were trying to steal the truck. They went into the ignition. They tore off the ignition device, but somehow they couldn't get the truck started, or they screwed up there. But then they looked in the back and they saw that I had my briefcase and this backpack and another little suitcase, and they stole that. Well, my brother, he's security at a different hotel down on the strip, and he's like, yeah, well, maybe what it was is they had people that were actually just kind of watching the parking lot, and when they see the type of vehicle that they want to steal, they call up their friends or their buddies, which in this case, they were in a big parking lot across the street, came in, and within an hour of me parking there, they had already pulled up on my truck and tried to steal it. So it was the first time that it's in my neighborhood. I mean, it's a nice area, and I didn't realize that they had these kinds of challenges, though my mechanic told me that my truck is one of those that they like to try to steal. And sure enough, that was what they were really going after. It's a 2004 Ford F-350. You know, it's not like what you would think would be an ideal truck, but I guess that you know, there's a big market for that, especially to take those vehicles and bring them down to Mexico. So there's a big market for taking that type of vehicle down into Mexico, where they can bring it, you know, out to wherever they're selling it to, and those parts are available down there. So yeah,
they don't steal that trucks that or trucks that use that much diesel or petrol or gas or whatever you want to call it in South Africa, because we had another petrol hike, or I think the petrol hike is on Wednesday, where it goes up with R1.21 per liter. So it's hectic. So your truck's safe in South Africa. Nobody will steal it. Like, seriously.
yeah. You know, it took a long time. I went out there. I got the security guards to come out, and they checked their cameras and all that. And it took like another hour and a half or 2 hours before the cops showed up. And one of the things that what the police officer said, she's like, well, how do you know, I know it's difficult for you to kind of think about what got stolen, which, you know, like days later, you start to remember, oh, I had that in there. Oh, I had that in there. Oh, I had that in there. Actually, probably over $6,000 worth of stuff was stolen. But she was like, you know, I know it's difficult because you just got violated. And I was like, I didn't associate that term to what happened. And then I was talking with my sister yesterday, and she said the same thing. You were violated. And I'm like, no, that's. I told my sister, I said, that's not how I look at it. But because that term in and of itself has got a real connotation to it.
Oh my gosh.
A Mexican Ford dealer, huh?
Oh my gosh, Brian, you're crazy.
But, you know, what it comes down to is a lot of times when you have something like that happen, it can be very traumatic, right? And it was, because I just lost not just the money value, but more importantly, I lost 20 years of data that wasn't completely backed up to the cloud or anything like that, along with, you know, some other things that you can't replace. But if you consider it to be, you know, I was violated, and you use that term to describe it, it can have a very emotional response to it. And it is an emotional event, but an event is just an event. And it's your choice to define how you're going to place the meaning on it, what words you're going to choose to describe it. And when you talk about the word violated, it just brings up a lot of real negative emotions. So I look at it as I just got my shit stolen, right? And it's a pain in the ass, and it has bothered me for the past few days. I'm trying to still talk to the police, still trying to talk to the insurance company, still trying to do those things. But I don't, you know, have this thing like, okay, they targeted me specifically, and I was the target of being violated. No, they were trying to steal a truck. It happened to be my truck. They stole my stuff, and I look at it from that perspective, and that goes along with kind of the whole, it ties into trust, right? And trust in society, trust in self, and how you're going to view things like this when it happens to you. Because, you know, unfortunately, it happens to more people than we want to believe or wish that was the case in society. But it happens quite often. I see Sean is saying where the gun's registered in Las Vegas or in Nevada. there's limited registration that's maintained. You buy the gun, and even the police don't have access to the information in terms of like the serial numbers and so forth on the gun. But when you buy the gun, they have to call in and say, okay, here's and give the serial numbers of the guns. But in Nevada, they don't really have a lot of visibility to that. So I had to try to backtrack through paperwork and things like that in order to provide the police the information on the serial numbers of the guns. So that's Nevada. Other states may have more control over that. California is one that definitely does. But that, that doesn't really help until they find the gun. Usually when they find the gun, it's either because it was pawned and somebody tried to make money off of it, or it was in a violent crime. And that's the part that I worry about most. Like the gun that I said was the more powerful one, it's called an FN57. It shoots like a miniature AR-15 bullet or M16 bullet. It shoots a smaller version of that. So it can penetrate normal body armor and things along those lines.
I want to ask a question. Sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
don't you guys have a rule that you're not allowed to leave firearms in a vehicle if you get out of a vehicle?
No.
Because I know in South Africa we struggle to get any firearm licenses, and it's but they're very, very strict in South Africa. But don't you guys have rules that you're not allowed to leave the weapon unattended or whatever in the vehicle?
No, and I don't know that it really makes a whole lot of difference between whether you maintain it in your vehicle or you maintain it in your house. If somebody were to break into the house, they could just as well have taken that gun unless you have it locked up in a safe. But in a lot of cases, and the reason I even have those guns is not to keep them in a safe, because that doesn't do me any good in the safe if there's a self-defense need.
No, I understand, and I see Brian says Second Amendment rights. I'm not familiar with how that works and everything. So that was why I was asking if there is rules and everything. I mean, that's the only. I do not know what that means.
Yeah, well, in the United States, the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms, and how that's interpreted depends on who you talk to. But essentially, it's kind of being that we have the right to carry arms and protect ourselves, and getting apolitical or political. Part of the reason that there's a challenge in the United States for trying to do some of the lockdowns that they've done in Australia and stuff, where they like really locked you into your house because of COVID. It probably wouldn't go over that good here, because there's more guns in America than there are. I mean, more guns in the public in America than there is population. So, it would be very difficult to try to tell people. And part of the reason I like going up to South Dakota is it's even more pro-choice, more pro-guns, for protection. So it is different in every state, though.
Sorry, I know that's now off topic. The reason I'm asking is I know that in South Africa, if your gun is not in the safe and your child, let's say, plays with the gun, which had happened in South Africa, and they shoot one of the kids or someone in that, then the person who the gun is registered to also gets into trouble. I don't know.
I wish they did that more often here, because
that's why I wanted to ask: is it the same in America or not? Is it?
I think that they should be the parents or whoever the owner of the gun is should be prosecuted more heavily than they are here, because it does happen a lot. Not every day, but it happens frequently here, where a child or somebody gets a hold of a gun and they end up shooting a friend. They've shot their parents, they shot themselves, because the guns were left out in the open without any kind of a lock on them. And they were loaded to where the bullets normally in the chamber, which is, something that I personally do carry my guns that way, because if I'm going to use them for self-defense, I don't want to have to cock the gun and put a round in there. I want the round to be there. But you've got to be very cognizant of the people around you. So if I have kids, like friends bring their kids over to the house or something, then I go around and I make sure that wherever I have my guns, that I move those guns so that they're not going to be easily accessed by anybody or know where any of this stuff is.
The thing is, in South Africa, we also want to defend ourselves because there's a lot of crime and stuff where people get hijacked next to the road and then they shoot them in the head next to the highway, two young kids. I mean, it happened a while ago and everything because of guns, illegal guns and everything that they stole. Because as South Africans, it's difficult to get a gun to protect yourself due to criminals stealing the guns and all that kind of thing. So it's very difficult regulating something like that. I think that.
Yeah, here in Mexico, it's not illegal to have a gun. You cannot have a gun at all,
Wow.
or carry one, or even have one in your house. You cannot. Period. It's illegal to have a gun here in Mexico, unless you're a police officer or a
Yeah.
cartel, of course.
Yeah, well,
Then you
one of
don't
the
ask,
reasons,
exactly, if you can't tell, you don't ask permission. You just do whatever the
well,
hell you want.
one of the reasons that it's held so closely here in the United States that you have the right to bear arms is so that you can't have, your governments can't be so corrupt that they can just use their weapons to control you 100%. If you look at a lot of fascist countries in the past, they've gone around, they've collected all the weapons or as much as they could from the general population, because then the army or the police state or whatever is the only one that has that kind of armament. And here in the U.S., that's part of the reason that even the militias were kind of geared toward, if you try to, if the enemy of the government is the government, then state militias can actually protect themselves from the government. And that's kind of what's reason why everybody wants to have that, Second Amendment held very, very tightly.
Thank you.
Like sometimes, like that now that I'm seeing, these in different perspectives, like the US and how it's different in South Africa and here in Mexico, and we all want the same thing, which is all being safe. And sometimes, yeah, peace, and bad stuff happens, like it happened to you, Brett, and it has happened to me several times here in Mexico, and probably you, Ilse, in South Africa. But how do we make sure to remain hopeful, to remain grateful? What are some of the things that you guys do that, even though you have had this bad event in your life, you're still grateful and hopeful for this life?
I look at it right now and I say, what positive came out of this event, or what is the universe basically trying to tell me by this happening to me? And maybe it is, I lost a computer that's got 20 years of work in it, 20 years of stuff, a lot of which I'm not going to ever be able to get back. Pictures that have been, in my computer, those types of things. And maybe it's that the universe is saying it's time to get out of the past and move forward in the future. And I think that that's something that is a good lesson for me to learn. I've been putting together a lot of stuff for, different leadership programs that I was going to do, but I haven't actually completed a number of them. And maybe what it's telling me is stop fucking around, putting everything together, and actually do it. Stop relying on what you were thinking in the past, and let's move forward into the future. So that's how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it as the universe is telling me that there's some things that I needed to change. Carrying 3 guns, I was carrying 3 guns because I was moving from one house to the other. Normally, I would never have all of that stuff in the car at the same time. It also had my passport. It had, so I lost my passport. I lost my Healy, my frequency device. I lost keys, separate sets of keys to the car. I had to rekey my parents' house because it also had the title to my car in there. There was all of this stuff that almost I would never have in my car. And yet it was all there that night, and this happened on that night. So it's like they hit the jackpot or they hit the lottery, and I hit the opposite of the lottery, right? So now I got to get a passport. I got to do all this work, but it's a learning lesson. It's not one that I'm afraid of, in terms of them coming after me. Though I did want to make sure that I rekeyed the house so that they couldn't look at my title of my car and say, "Oh, well, that's the address. We got all these keys. Let's go see if they work in the doors," kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that was the reason that I had the guns. Normally, I would not have that many guns in the car. And normally, one of those I would be carrying on me because I have a concealed carry weapons permit, so I can actually wear a pistol without it showing in public. And in Nevada, you can actually wear the gun as long as you show it. You don't have it covered. If you own a pistol, you can wear it in a holster and walk around, and unless you go into stores that say no guns allowed, and casinos are no guns allowed, you can't bring them in there, but otherwise you can.
Cool. But you didn't answer the question, Brett. How do you make sure to remain grateful and hopeful, even though you went through that experience?
Well, like I said, I wasn't physically hurt. Mm-hmm. Nobody around me was physically hurt. I can recover from the loss of the material stuff. I can live without the information, the data that I lost. Is it going to create challenges for me? Yes. In fact, Brit Brat, I was supposed to meet with her last Friday, and I couldn't do it because I didn't have a computer. I had to go find an old computer and bring that back to life. And then yesterday, we were supposed to meet, and my computer was still giving me trouble, which I think I finally have corrected. So Britt and I are going to be meeting so that I can do the wealth dynamics review with her today. But, it was a pain in the ass, and it created, a challenge in my schedule, her schedule, because of that. But again, it's one of those things where it's a matter of really looking at it and saying, what could it have been worse? Hell yeah, it could have been a lot worse. They could have stolen the truck, which would have been an even more difficult challenge for me, because they would have stolen the truck and everything in it. In this case, they didn't get the truck, but they got everything in it. So it all depends on how you want to look at it. And I think if you look at things and try to find the positive of it, then the event is not as impactful on your life. It's not as traumatic in terms of what happened. But if you look at it and you say, "Oh, I've just been violated, and now I'm afraid to go into my car, and I'm afraid to park in the parking lot, I'm afraid," you change your life, and it's your choice that has changed your life on an event that is like 1 in a million that it would ever happen again to you.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that when I had one event like that, um, it was very very hard for me at the beginning, because I was robbed, but they took me inside a car, and they were holding guns, so I thought they were going to kidnap me, literally. But thankfully they just took everything, and they pushed me out of the car after that. And I remember that for the first 6 months I was afraid to even take an Uber. I couldn't do much because I was scared. But at some point I started to think, like, I'm still alive and I'm grateful. It was like if I was born again, because at some point I felt so grateful for another chance to live, and for another chance to be able to do more things. So I literally, after that event, I looked at life, with a different perspective, and always remaining grateful, for all the things that I have, and my family and everything. But also knowing that even though a bad thing happened to you once, doesn't mean that it's gonna be constantly happening to you. And to learning to trust again, and believing that there's good people, and that eventually we'll be in peace. Well, that's what I like to think, that eventually we'll be in peace. It's been rewarding. And sometimes, I know, like my mom, sometimes she's afraid of me, because she's like, oh no, you're gonna go out, I'm scared, and I'm like, we cannot live in fear, like we are supposed to live our lives. And the more we fear things, the more we attract those things to our lives. So it's yeah, it's good to be safety in safety, and be careful, yes, but also live your life, and do things, trusting that the best result will come to you.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, well, in general, people tend to generalize what happened, or say something is, an event like this is something that you're going to experience again, or everybody experiences, or there's always these bad people out there. If you think about it, there's what, almost 8 billion people in the world today, and we live together in general in peace and together without this kind of violence happening to each and every person. Sometimes it's more frequent in other places, but in general, it doesn't happen. In general, you can walk down the street and not expect to be attacked, right? Um, it's the same kind of thing that you have when you talk about some of these prejudices that are prevalent in today's world, where people are afraid of Muslims. What, Muslims are not why would you be afraid? There's the the religion of Islam is actually like the largest population of religion in the world. And yet we're not attacked on a daily basis, because it's only the radicals that are doing those types of things. It's only the criminals that are doing these types of things. It's very small, very, very small part of the population that builds and creates this kind of fear. And that's the type of thing that we have to guard against. We have to guard against, like Fernando, like you were saying, guard against living our life in fear, because we attract that when it happens. We give people the power over our lives. It's not like they're taking it away. We're giving it to them when we live in that type of fear. Don't give away your life to somebody else. And the same type of thing happens in relationships and so forth, where men or women feel like they got violated by a relationship, and as a result they generalize and say that I'm never going to get back together with a man, I'm never going to get back together with a woman, because I had this happen to me. Well, now you've just given them power over your life. That person that you may have gotten divorced from, that person that you had that difficult situation with, actually now has the power over your life that you said that you never wanted to give them. But that's how you live your life now. So beware of that. Beware of that. Stay stay positive and recognize that individual events does not and should not be considered a general situation in society.
Exactly. Take control of your life.
Exactly. Exactly.
Fear is a natural, but we cannot allow it to control our actions. Love, energy, emotions, we have to learn how to discern what triggered it and respond to it instead of reacting to it. That's
Absolutely.
very true.
Absolutely. Bob's got it absolutely right there. That's what I try to help people with because, so often we've allowed those things to happen. We've allowed that type of fear, those types of meanings that we've chosen to put on events to live our life by things that no longer really affect us, but we allow it to affect us because we've now taken it internal when that event was maybe, like in this case, it was something that happened almost like in an instant, and I could either allow that to control my life for the rest of my life, or I can just learn from it and actually gain toward the future. And that's how I look at it right now.
That's where the problem comes in with trust, and that's why you have a lack of trust in people, because you stay in your lane and you do what you do, and then you get people that are not what they say they are, and then after a while things just go wrong and then they show their true colors. That's why people don't trust other people.
What's interesting is people
In
talk about,
relationship,
I don't, they're like, I don't trust anybody. I don't trust. Well, when you get in your car and you're driving on the road, you're trusting everybody else on that road to do what they're supposed to be doing. Now, granted, you're paying attention in case people don't do what they should be doing. But in general, you are trusting them. So a lot of people, that generalize and say, I don't trust anybody. I'm like, you drive? You walk on the road. Well, you're trusting people not to run you over. You're trusting people to do what they're supposed to do when they're driving. So yeah, you do trust. You pay attention. It's kind of like, what was that phrase? Trust but verify. That was one of the things that was used to be, I can't remember who it was, a president, I think it was Reagan or something. Yeah, I trust, but I'm going to verify that what you said is actually true. And that's when you really start to build a long-term trust in people, is when they say something and they do it, or they say something and they don't do it, then you're not going to trust them to get things done. Yeah, it was Reagan. Yeah. So that's a key point, is really to we trust people in general much more than we ever really think about.
but if you check, then people will show you that they're inconsistent.
Well, there's people are inconsistent, and I know our guest is coming on, but here's one thing to remember. Trust and even our own identity is situational. So in certain situations, you will do things that normally you would never say that you would ever do. Like, would you shoot somebody? No, I would never shoot anybody. If they were going to shoot your child, would you shoot them first? Yes, I would. Okay, well, then, those are the situational type things that happen in life. And those are similar things that are happening in today's world. I think that there's going to be a lot more violence actually in the United States and throughout the world, because the economy is really getting messed up. And when that happens, people are going to try to find different ways to put food on their table. And that oftentimes can turn in the direction like what happened to me, and they steal the stuff out of your car, or they try to steal your car. And they're not doing it because they want the truck themselves. They're doing it because they're going to sell it and then use the money for whatever they're going to use the money for.
Yes. But that's another topic for another day.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Brett, for joining us today. And we're going to get ready for our guest today. So thank you so much. We'll see you next week, Brett. Have a good day.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll catch up with you next week. I'll be back in South Dakota.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Bye.
So
Can I read or must I read the bio?
you cannot read the bio? You cannot find it?
No, I said, can I read it? Are
Oh,
you
I
ready
said you
to
cannot.
read
Oh,
it?
yeah, go ahead.
No, don't stress. Don't even stress. Okay, so let me just. We are interviewing Michael Seaver. I hope I'm saying it right. He's an award winning executive coach, leadership consultant, keynote speaker, and author. He is on a mission to unlock human potential to help people undercover and live their purpose and live a more meaningful and authentic life. His unique methodology has revolutionized the leaders that can live authentically and how organizations engage employees. He offers no nonsense strategies to help people find confidence in their lives narrative, commonalities across generations working today, and ways to communicate with emotional intelligence. Michael's newest book, I Know, a practical guide for awakening to what is within and finding work life integration, tells his story of excruciating emotional pain and contemplating suicide. Cleopatra, his cat, sensed his despair, kept him grounded, and helped him rise from his life's ashes. I know. I know is a how to guide Michael uses with clients, walking you through 3 phases of personal transformation and 9 processes you can complete alone with trusted friends. The book tells Michael's raw, authentic story, offers research based psychological truths, and is full of real world client examples. After reading, I know you'll transition from believing life's answers come from outside, does not come from outside yourself, to knowing you can discover the answers already inside yourself. For more than 25 years, Michael has led teams and has coached global leaders since 2011. He's invested thousands of hours in the arena, managing personal and organizational changes, guided others to uncover their life's mission, and taught leaders how to create psychological safety by inviting employees' life experience into the workplace. Featured in numerous publications such as Forbes, Authority, Medium, Thrive Global, Arizona Republic, Business Journals, Accounting Today, Financial Executive International, Best Companies USA. Michael has shared his experience widely. He is a frequent guest on international podcasts and have served on a variety of boards of directors. Michael graduated from the Thunderbird School of Global Management with an MBA and speaks a bit of Mandarin. Wow. He is certified by TTI Success Insights to administrator the DISC 12 Driving Forces Emotional Intelligence Assessment.
Awesome. Well, before we get to welcome Michael, we're going to hear a word from our sponsor.
Hi, my name is Brandon, and over the past year, the Delight Cafe team and I traveled across the U.S. researching this rapidly growing industry of CBD products. What we have found throughout the industry were products that were inconsistent in dosage and used ingredients that weren't even lab tested. Products with chalky textures, bitter aftertaste, and worst of all, confusion among the CBD consumers. That's why we created Delight Cafe. A 15 milligram, lab-tested, all-natural, water-soluble hemp CBD powder pack. It's odorless, colorless, and tasteless. Add it to your favorite drink of choice, wherever, whenever, on the go. Quickly find your calm, your balance, and your delight when you need it most.
Hello. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, Fernando, how are you?
Hi,
I'm doing very
Michael.
well. How are you doing today?
I'm marvelous. Also, a good day to you.
Hi, good day. How are
Good
you
day.
doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for reading my biography. I appreciate you doing that.
Very impressive
That's
bio. I was like, oh my gosh.
Thank
Where are you
you.
located, Michael?
I recently moved about 3 weeks ago from Phoenix, Arizona to Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill in North Carolina.
Ooh, awesome.
That is so
So
awesome.
yeah,
I read about your cat Cleopatra. Is it Cleopatra? Is it
yes,
Cleo? So you're a cat lover.
we have a dog and a cat in our home. I do love Cleopatra an extra amount for obvious reasons. Yes.
Yes, I've also had a Cleopatra. I'm gonna say it like that, but mine's name was Posty, and I understand exactly where you're coming from the grounding. Because when I 2 years ago, when he lived with me, I don't think people realize what a connection you can have with an animal like that, that raises your vibrations.
Completely agree. Right. It's something that it really struck me in October of 2017 when I was first introduced to Reiki healing and energy work and really understanding the connectivity of all things. And I had had Cleopatra for a number of years leading up to those moments in October 2017. But since then, I look at the connection between myself and Cleopatra or our dog, Phoebe, or other people, or just the universe in general. I look at it so differently because we're far more connected and similar than we're taught to believe.
Very interesting. I have a question because you say that you speak Mandarin. So how do you get to into Mandarin? I was like, did you just when they wake up like, hey, I want to study Mandarin, and or you had to study or?
It was a little bit more of the have to. And so my Mandarin today is a bit rusty, right? I'm not great at it now because I just haven't had a lot of chances to speak it with people. But
Mhm.
I chose in the year 2008 to go to the Thunderbird School of Global Management, which also managed just to mention just a second ago. And back then, part of the degree program was that you had to take at least 3 credit hours outside of the United States, and you had to speak a second language proficiently in order to graduate. Right? You didn't have a choice. And
Wow.
so I took that as a challenge, and I said to myself, what do I think is going to be a big part of the future? And so in January 2009, I traveled to China as part of the degree program to take classes there. And when I came back, I was so I appreciated the culture there so much that I spent the next 6 months in classes at Thunderbird for an hour and a half each morning during the week, learning the language. And so not only did I have to pass those 2 classes, but in order to graduate, I had to do something called the oral proficiency interview, which is that you have to figure out a way for 30 minutes to be able to speak in a conversation with a native speaker. And so I got onto the phone with this gentleman, and he asked me to confirm my student ID number and to confirm my name. And then he said, if you say anything else in English for the rest of this phone call, then you will fail. And so it was an incredible amount of pressure, on me because I had only been speaking it for 6 months and didn't have a lot of friends that spoke it. But it was such a great experience because now I see the world so differently.
It's very cool when you get to learn a new language because obviously English is not my first language, but when you start to understanding, like it opens up like new doors, to talk with new people. And I was actually looking back and thinking, like if I would have not spoken English, I would have not been able to have these friends that I have now because they only speak English. And it's very cool, and you get to learn about the culture and everything. So how hard was it? Because I know that English is very hard. How many months or years it took when to get to a point where you could say like I understand things.
Mm-hmm. I would say it was probably in month 4, maybe month 5, that it really started to make sense because we were there each morning of the work week for an hour and a half, and there was the teacher and then 4 other students and myself. And so this was early 2009. And so it took 5 days a week, an hour and a half each day of interacting with these folks to be able to get to the point that I could really understand it. And that's the thing about Mandarin Chinese. It's a very, very different structured language than traditional Latin or Romantic languages, in that the way that you construct sentences are very different from English or Spanish or Latin, things like that. So that was the hardest part, was thinking through whatever it was that I was hearing in English and then having to retranslate it back to Chinese. And so it took me 4 or 5 months to be able to get to the point where I could really understand it just straight through Chinese, not having to mentally translate it between the 2 languages. It was pretty hard.
Very interesting.
I can imagine it's very, very hard. So your book, when you read your bio, it says there that your book is based on your story and that you contemplated suicide and everything. Yeah, the book I know. So I want to ask, was it difficult writing your story and what happened to you for all the world to see? And then how did you get to deal with that fear and to go like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do this. I'm not gonna worry about the people that are involved, because it can't always be good stories and everything.
Yeah, great question, Elsa. Thank you. For me, in the introduction to the book, talks about a time in May of 2019 where I contemplated suicide. And as you mentioned, Cleopatra laid on my chest and she purred with a resonance that it helped me to understand why I needed to stay on Earth. And so it was literally in that moment that I realized that I needed to tell my story. But to your point, I had a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of nervousness about actually telling the story for fear of the retribution that would come back from my business community, family, fill in the blank. And so what I decided to do in the summer of 2020, after the pandemic started, was to hire a writing coach to hold me accountable. So I forced her, right, by paying her money, and then forced myself indirectly to work through the process of telling the story, having the conversations with family members or friends, talking with clients that I would like to feature them in the book, if you will. So it happened in May of 2019 that I realized that I needed to tell the story. I went through the process of examining all of my fears throughout late 2019, early 2020. And then I finally worked up the courage to hire the writing coach to work with me in the summer of 2020 to say, let's tell the story, right? Let's figure this out. And so I'm so thankful that I went through that process of recognizing the fear, working through releasing it, and then slowly testing myself by confronting myself with the fear in small increments, increasing. And that was the thing that helped me to build up a resilience to where I'm at today. I don't mind sharing anything vulnerably about my life at all.
Interesting. 2 questions. First, where can people get your book?
Yeah, thank you. So if someone goes to michaelsseaver.com, you'll see the book's link there. But it's available in 40,000 retailers across the world, from Barnes & Noble to Amazon to Google to Apple, whatever your preferred retailer is. They can go and get it in print, ebook, or audiobook, whichever one of those paths makes the most sense for them.
Nice. Second question, what inspired you to write the book?
I think my story is not all that unique in that each person around the world goes through a set of challenges when they're younger. And then around age 28, 29, they overcome the challenges. And then they help for the next probably 20 years. They help others overcome the exact same challenge that they went through, right? So I give you that equation, and I'm going to say a phrase that I think really embodies who I am and what I do. And the phrase is, be the person you needed when you were younger. And when I started to really absorb that and really start to figure out what that meant, I started to realize that there were clients that were telling me that my processes were really meaningful to them. Or I was hearing these stories back from other people in my community that would look at my social post, or they would listen to me speak on stage. And they said, there's something different about him. He needs to tell his story or tell client stories. Now is the right time. And so I was getting all this information from people around me that it was the right thing for me to do, to be able to share the story openly, even though it was pretty challenging for me emotionally to do it. So it was really looking at all the patterns and the information and the signs that were happening around me that I said, you know what, it's time to do it now, and to really move forward and to give other people tools to help them become the most authentic versions of themselves.
Nice. I like that. I have left your website here for people that want to look you up, find your book, read more information about you. Now I'll shut up so Ilse can ask a question.
No, don't stress. I saw on your YouTube, because you've got a YouTube channel as well. There's a video on there, and it's an hour-long video. But can you explain to our viewers in short, what does driving accountability through core values? What can you teach them about that? Because you've got a video on your YouTube about that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think about our society, and maybe even in South Africa, Fernando, maybe even Mexico, we happen to live at a time in human history where in traditional education systems, we don't teach individuals what their core values are. We're not given assessments, we're not given tests. It's not something that's openly addressed or talked about, because society, for whatever reason, short term, has chosen a very collectivist mindset, so that people have to sacrifice themselves in order for the greater good of everything else. And so I'm of the mindset that there should be a much more individualistic mindset where we really know ourselves at a very, very deep level. And if we know ourselves at a very deep level, we vibrate at a higher level, and people around us pick up and consciously behave quite differently in a better way. So I realized that there was no place in traditional K through 12 education in America, or even really in university structures and systems, where we were openly talking about an individual's core values. So I happened to find a friend of mine. I didn't realize he was doing it until he really got into it, but he started something called the Peak Fleet. And he found, and his business partner found a way to create 55 core human values and put them into a card deck. So you can buy this card deck and you can play with the cards, and he and she walk you through a process to help you understand, out of these 55 core human values, what are your top 6, right? Which is a very difficult activity, because you could be 20, 50, 60, 70 years of age and never having known what your core values are. And so the very first step is to make sure that you know what they are by going through a process, whether you're doing it through the card deck or you're doing it through an online activity. We have to know what your core values are. Now, the trick after that is to say, what % of your day are you spending living your core values? Because most people, it's going to be a very small percentage, right? They're not spending a very large percentage of their day doing what they want. So then, depending on what the client needs, I will walk them through an activity where I have them list down the left-hand side of a sheet of paper each of their top 6 core values, and then to take a week or 2 weeks to just brainstorm or to talk to somebody else about as many ways as possible to live that core value more, right? Which is really critical, because most people aren't living it enough, but we want to brainstorm as many ways as possible. Now, if you happen to be working full-time for some employer, another fun activity that you can do is to take your employer's core values and put them side by side to your personal core values, and to see if there's links between them. Because oftentimes there is, especially if you like your job, you'll be engaged or happy. But if you happen to be disengaged or unhappy by your job, the probability is that your core values do not align with what it is that your employer values. So it's important to find those links or those connections. Now, after you've found those connections or realized that you would like to live your core values more, the way that you would do it is slowly each week try one new activity based on at least one of the core values. Right? We can't whole scale change people overnight. We need to do one thing per week. That's it. Right? Small little improvements and increments matter so much. So that's what I do, Ilse, is I just ask them to know what their core values are, brainstorm new ways to live them, and then take some time over 3 or 4 months to experiment with living them in new ways. And then let's say 90 or 120 days later, they can say, here's what I'm going to keep and here's what I'm going to get rid of. And it's a very easy way to absorb some of those things into your experience in a really safe way.
Very interesting. What is it? What is your favorite part, or something that you really love about your doing what you do?
As a coach, really, for me, sometimes it's one-to-one coaching. Sometimes it's training about things like I think Kyle was talking about yesterday, like DISC and motivators and things like that. I do some of that. Sometimes it's speaking on stage. Sometimes it's doing cool stuff like this, being a podcast guest. And I think for me, the part that I love doing more than anything else is being with a person as they're navigating some sort of massive transformation in their life, right? That's, for some reason, I came to Earth this time to help people at the point of transformation or change. And whenever I get into a situation where that occurs, doesn't matter if it's one-to-one or if it's in some other means, I love being with someone at that point, because I've changed a lot. I have a lot of processes and things that I think can help people. I love to be there for them at that moment. It matters so much to me.
I understand that completely. What I did when I went through my spiritual awakening, or just deciding, was just to quit my job and decide to move to America, because I also feel that is where the mission and everything I want to do has taken me. So my question is, what did you do in your personal life to get from contemplating suicide to writing this book and helping people in an employee setting and not just in their personal lives?
Yeah. I think that we're, in a very spiritual sense, right? The year 2012 was the end of something called the Age of Pisces. And so for those folks who are into understanding, with regards to the magnetic poles on Earth and how they kind of shift and change and the energy shifts that happen on Earth, 2012, the Mayan calendar ending was really just the end of the age of Pisces. And so we've been going through nearly 10 years of transitioning into what's called the age of Aquarius, which is a very decentralized way of life, right? People focusing on themselves far more than focusing on finding meaning from being a part of some other group. And so when I thought about what happened for me in 2018 and early 2019, I made a conscious choice and decision in July and August of 2018 to leave a 6-year-long romantic relationship. And then that also at that exact same time, her daughter, who is now 20, her daughter went to college, right? So I had exited a relationship, and now all of a sudden as a parent, I'm empty nesting. And so that was the first thing, or two things that really struck me hard at the latter part of 2018 emotionally. So I promised myself in 2018 that I was going to find a way to double down on my business. And I tried through having online courses and through facilitating high-end workshops in Phoenix, Arizona. And the first 3 that I tried of both, they did not sell. They flopped, right? They were not successful. I was not producing revenue from them at all. And that got me to that place in March, April, May, specifically May, where I was like, gosh, here I am. I've exited this relationship. My stepdaughter is off to college. I don't hardly see her anymore. And these things that I'm trying in my business are not doing well, right? What is wrong with me? And I kept asking myself that over and over again. And I really had to get to this point or awareness that it was just what I now refer to as an Earth school curriculum, right? We all come to Earth with a specific intent to learn certain things, and that this was a thing that I needed to recognize or understand. So about myself, right? That I had to become more independent. I had to build up an emotional resilience. I had to honor that my life's work was much bigger than I could see at that point in time. So what I realized is after going through that I needed to tell my story more broadly, but I also believed that many other people around the world were going through roughly the same thing, right? Self-awareness, getting to a deeper point of understanding who they were. So I started in my coaching of organizations or of individuals to slowly introduce topics around very personal things that they were navigating, or things around emotional intelligence, or introducing them to small bits of spirituality, or introducing them to small things of what's referred to as an ACE score, an adverse childhood experience, and slowly dripping those things out to people to see what they would accept or not accept. And what I found was that people genuinely loved to talk about the things from their childhood, teenage years, and early 20s. So I was able to position it in such a way that the average person inside of a corporate job felt okay to talk about it, because I was using the lens of the DISC assessment or emotional intelligence or core values to help them express themselves about their personal life. And so as a result of me being vulnerable and telling my story, and then giving them vehicles, the DISC assessment, core values assessment, whatever it was, gave them vehicles to then see themselves in a new light, all of a sudden we're bringing this whole person to work, right? There's not just work Elsa and fun Elsa, right? They're the same. And I was giving them a vehicle by which they could be 100% themselves, both at home and at work.
Wow, that's awesome. What would you say is the most challenging thing about what you do?
The most challenging thing is, I would say, I absorb the emotions of the people around me. And so I watch, like Elsa said in the bio that she read, I've thousands and thousands of hours of listening to stories and being with people at that point of grief or despair or doubt. And the hardest part for me is to not absorb their emotions. And the reason why that's important is that a professor at Wharton in Pennsylvania in America, she found that emotions are contagious, right? She did some research and she found that when one person in a group is feeling a particular emotion, the other people in the group subconsciously pick up and then replicate that emotion in themselves. And I recognized in the early parts of my coaching that I was doing the exact same, right? I was recognizing the negative emotions that these people were feeling, and then I was absorbing it, and that made me feel more negative. So the hardest part is to absorb the emotion in a negative way, but also to see so many people feel negative, right? In America specifically, only about 35-36% of people here actually like their jobs, right? And so there's there's a lot of distrust, and there's a lot of doubt, and there's a lot of people who are unhappy. So part of it is that I'm seeing all of this around me, and then I'm absorbing it, right, deeply. And that brings me so many challenges that I have to find balance in my own life, right? So I have to go spend time in nature. I have to meditate for 20 minutes each morning, spend more time doing yoga, just doing things to try to release some of that negativity, because right now, unfortunately, there's so much of it around us.
That's true. That's true. One of our viewers sent me a message, and he wants to know. I don't know if he wants me to say. Kevin wants to know if you will be able to help him. He's got autism, to help him with his business and everything as well.
Of course. Yeah. I'll give him, or find a way to give him my contact information, and we'll set up a call. Would love to.
Awesome. Because he sent me a message and he's like, please don't forget to ask. Don't forget to ask.
Yeah.
So I wrote it down here. My next question that I had is what compliment, because you've worked with some big mentors and everything, what was the one compliment that you got from them that made you smile and happy when they said it because you look up to them?
Yeah, it came to me a couple of times. Years ago, I asked my clients what it was about me that was most beneficial to them. And they said repeatedly, and I didn't realize I was doing this, right? So that's why it was so meaningful, is I didn't realize I was doing this for them, was that I listened without judgment and very, very deeply. And that I was able to not only hear what they were saying, but I was able to pick up on the body language and the tone of voice. And that, to me, like connecting all the dots between those things, was something I didn't realize I was doing because nobody had ever called it out. But when I heard it back in spades from all of these people, that to me was so meaningful, because I think that if I can do it and lead by example in my own way, even if I wasn't realizing that I was doing it, and other people then do it, I think we get to a much better place of balance on earth, right? Where people are listening, not with the intent to respond, right? Because many people just want to respond and be heard. But I prefer to listen with the intent to understand, right? Just to say, okay, what is it that this person's actually going through? And how do I help them with the totality of their experience, not just trying to prove my point to them or judge them for what it is that they've experienced.
Good. It's now that you mentioned that, do you have going back to the subject, because you say that helping all these people, like, it drains you sometimes and it's very challenging. Do you have any ways that you recharge yourself? How do you deal with all that?
Yeah, it is. It's a conscious effort each day where I'm proactively, intentionally thinking about those things. And so in a very practical sense, I limit the number of coaching sessions that I have in a day, right? So very basic, control of the calendar is to make sure that I limit the number of times that I'm interacting with people, because it being a little bit more of an empath, or being a little bit more of an introvert, or thinking about those things, you have to be very mindful of your energy. So each night before I go to bed, I try to plant in my subconscious a thought, right? Some sort of positive thought. So that I'm laying there awake and I think about something intentionally, so that when I fall asleep, my subconscious or my unconscious or my soul is finding a way to process and navigate the feelings of that, or the experience of that, while I'm sleeping. So then I wake up, and if I can remember my dream, right, which just is a metaphorical learning for the things we need to do in our waking life, is I process whatever it was that was happening in the dream in relation back to the question I asked prior to falling asleep, right? So that helps me to release and to feel balanced. And then there's a spot in the office here where I sit for 20 minutes in the morning and meditate, right? And just really think about whatever messaging is coming to me from the universe, try to integrate it and make it make sense as much as I can. And then I go to the gym 3 times a week, because I need to be able to get some of that stale energy out of my body. So that helps me tremendously to remain balanced and to release the emotions. And, Tiffany and I, my partner, we have the dog and the cat. So we spend at least 30 to 45 minutes each day outside with them, right? And just honoring their experience and their existence. But just turning off phones and not being at all involved in technology, and just being a human being, that is like one of the best things that I do during the day to remain balanced, because it gives me the energy then to wake up the next day and do it all over again.
Yes, because that's great, because, me being an empath, I know exactly how that feels, that sometimes you are not even talking with a person, but you are just there in a room and you literally get charged with that energy, or something just by giving them a handshake, you are able to feel and sense their energy. And I had that experience where I literally just give somebody my hand and they literally just drain me. It's like if they would take all my energy away. And I'm like, wow, and it's, so I can understand how would you feel, after, trying to help several people, in the day, how would you need to, recharge your batteries again.
Yeah, good for you. And thank you for sharing that, Fernando. It is important to think about each of us is a very unique soul, right? We came to Earth with a specific curriculum of things that we need to learn. And all of us can be deeply empathetic, right? Some of us just happen to learn those things a little bit earlier in this life than other people do. Not right or wrong, right? We just do. So kudos to you, Fernando, for honoring that about yourself and then figuring out a way to balance yourself throughout the day. I think it's great.
Thanks.
It's hard.
Thanks for sharing.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard work staying balanced when you, especially when you're at work and you have to deal with so many energies and you don't know where people are coming from. So I saw another video on your on your YouTube page, and it says it's about Taylor communication, and the heading caught my eye for the reason, and it says Taylor communication to build trust while still setting boundaries for yourself.
Yeah.
I struggle a lot with boundaries, especially when it comes to when you feel people's energies do not match what they say. And what advice do you have in setting that communication boundaries and everything?
Yeah. I think Kyle Gillette on yesterday's show talked a little bit about being aware of DISC and the connection between knowing our preferred communication styles. And so let me start with that first, Elsa, is to say I'm also certified by the same company, ironically, to deliver that assessment, but it's really powerful. So anybody in the world can, go online and do a free DISC assessment or similar. But the DIS or C, knowing what your preferred style is actually really important because it helps you to know what to say yes or no to, or it helps you to know where to distribute energy. So the D's and the I's, they're extroverts. They get energy by being with people, right? They have to be around people taking action. Whereas the S's and the C's are more introverted. They get energy by being alone. Right. So first and foremost, recognize your style. If you're extrovert, go spend time with folks. That's what's going to recharge you. If you're an introvert, get a book or go home and hang out with your family, right? Do something for yourself. That's key. Now, second is to think about the acculturation that you received from your family. And now what I mean by that is that Dr. Bruce Lipton, who has been studying brain plasticity and how it functions, he's been studying it since 1971. And there are 5 major brainwave states, or how our brain moves information from neuron to neuron. And it just so happens that from birth until age 6, the brain is in something called the theta brainwave state, which means that everything that happens around us, the acculturation we receive from our families, the things we see in the community, what we see on television, whatever, fill in the blank, it gets baked straight into our subconscious, which is like the operating model by which we behave in the world. Okay, so when you turn 7, you move into the beta brainwave state, which is kind of your conscious mind. And what your beta brainwave state does is it pulls information from what you learned in the theta brainwave state. So whatever's happening in your unconscious or your subconscious, you consciously, through the beta brainwave state, repeat over and over and over and over again, based on what your family or guardians taught you when you were a kid. So number 1, understand your communication preferences. Number 2, take the time to reflect back on what was happening in your childhood, right? What were you taught via your parents, guardians, or people around you? Okay, whatever that is. Now, number 3 is to then look at today, saying, okay, where do I distribute time or energy for myself? This is the really key thing. There's a lot of things that you can ask yourself with regards to, is this person I'm interacting with, do they gift me energy or do they extract my energy, right? Or does this person seem to have similar interests or core values as me? If so, yes, I'm going to spend more time with them. If no, not going to spend more time with them, right? Is a person communicating to you or tailoring communication to you in a way that you want to be communicated to, or no, right? So there's all these things that if a person is supportive of your life's mission, is supportive of your core values, is supportive of what makes you authentically unique, then you should spend more time with them, right? They're a good person to be with in your life right now. But if the person that you're interacting with doesn't vibrate at that same level, or was only meant to be with you at one phase of your life that has now ended, that is A-okay, right? Respond to the text message just a little bit less, or do not respond to the social media comment, or do not respond to the email. Or if they ask for your time, just say, hey, I'm not feeling great today. I'm just going to spend the time with myself today. I don't want you to completely ignore them, honor their being and their existence, but honor yourself more, right? So spend less time increasingly with that person over, let's say, 3 or 4 months, and then spend more time over that same 3 or 4 months with people who genuinely gift you energy.
Go ahead, Ilse. I'm writing down.
Sorry, I don't want to talk over you. There's a. I just said. Do you feel that I don't like talking about this, but that COVID has made a lot of people jump from that my life is mediocre to that I need to find out what my purpose is because life is too short? Have you noticed a lot of people changing the way they do things?
Billions of people. Yeah. I mean, so it's hard if you only pay attention to the mainstream media, which is a very controlled narrative, right? There's very little truth to what you see via the mainstream media. So if you only watch that, you're going to be missing out on the vast majority of what's actually happening on Earth, right? I'll give you a quick example. Is that on Earth, there's something called the electromagnetic spectrum, and that is how information is moved around. I'd say when you're using Wi-Fi or you're looking at how the microwave heats up your food, it's using different frequencies on the electromagnetic spectrum. But it also happens that the human eye can only see 0.0035% of that spectrum. So we cannot see 99.99% of what's happening in front of our face right now, right? So we're in this place of not being able to understand or know that. So also real quick, restate the question again so I don't get too far off track. What was it?
Okay, it was, do you find that a lot of people with the COVID are finding their mission?
Yep. So I wanted to mention the thing about the electromagnetic spectrum to help people understand that even physically, the vast majority of what's happening in front of them, they don't know, they can't see, they can't interact with, right? So just have that as the foundation. So the important thing to then remember and understand is that in March and April of 2020, overnight, almost literally overnight, in America specifically, about 71% of the workforce, 20% of the workforce actually worked from home. But then overnight, more than 71% were all of a sudden working from home. And so within a matter of nights or weeks, we went from this place of believing that we couldn't change to now all of a sudden everybody around the world believed that they could change, right? Because they were forced into working from home. They were forced into homeschooling their children. They were forced into having different habits and routines and rituals day to day to day. And so in a very short period of time, 2 or 3 months, people moved to a place of understanding that they were far more capable of change than they had ever been before, and that they were being given the opportunity to use their voice at a scale that they never had, right? Because now all of a sudden they had options, they had opportunities, they had possibilities that they didn't believe because they were changing. So as we matriculated through the latter part of 2020 and then throughout 2021, we are seeing massive whole-scale change across the world right now. And the key underlying driver of that, as I mentioned earlier, is the age of Aquarius, where we're moving into a place where people no longer find meaning by being associated with a sports team or a particular political party or such and such university, such and such religion. All of those things are dissolving right in front of our eyes, effectively. And so now we're moving into this place where people are starting to learn unequivocally, based on all the change that they've navigated in the last 18 months, that true meaning to life comes from their own life's mission, comes from their own core values. It comes from their own self-awareness about their Earth School curriculum and what they're doing here. And so now, if you're only watching the mainstream media, you're going to miss out on this whole-scale change that's happening across the world. But the vast majority of the billions of people on this planet have already made this transition. But it's just waiting for the last few to kind of catch up. And it's commonly referred to as collective consciousness, but the collective consciousness has already moved into a place of believing that the individual's life's mission is what we're here to learn and focus on. So short answer, yes, Ilse. Longer answer, I just offered it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that answer.
what are some ways, or how do you think somebody will be able to know or get a confirmation that they are living their life authentically?
Yeah. The easiest way would be to look at your day in terms of how happy are you day to day today. Like, so for some clients, I've just said, hey, each day this week, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being low, 10 being high, on how happy you are. Right. So at a very basic level, it could just be a simple scale like that. Other ways would be as having conversations with people around you and seeing what it is that they're saying back to you. Are they saying really nice things? Another thing could be using the core values example that Ilse brought up earlier. Is this for you to sit in reflection or to keep a journal of how often you are living that core value day to day today? So oftentimes I do ask my clients to either keep a gratitude journal so they can see the blessings that are flowing in their life, or I ask them to keep a pain journal, which is to track the number of times throughout the day or the week that they're feeling sad or mad or some other negative emotion. So whether it's rating yourself on a scale, whether it's getting feedback from other people, whether it's going back and reading your journal or reflecting, or finding a way to keep that pain journal or that gratitude journal so you can see, are you feeling more gratitude than you were last month? Or are you entering more information into the pain journal than you might have the month before? So it's all about taking the time to simply be and to take more time for reflection and finding patterns. Right? Everything on earth is just energy. It's just numbers. It's just number sequences. And so if you can think of emotions as data or your experiences as data, and then you track them through some sort of journal or spreadsheet or personal CRM you pick, that will help you tremendously to see how over time your level of emotional resilience or happiness or joy is increasing.
Cool. I love that. And what could you tell to somebody that, for example, very perfectionist people or somebody that knows that is aligned to their purpose, but is so hard on themselves that even if they have a bad day, they are too harsh on themselves and they think they have failed?
Yeah, I think that that's a pretty common thing, especially through all the tumultuousness and turmoil, right? On Earth, there is this thing called the Schumann Resonance, which is effectively Earth's heartbeat. And so the Earth vibrates at 7.83 hertz 24/7, right? Sometimes it spikes and goes higher, but for the most part, what we've seen across the world recently is that the Schumann resonance has been spiking. And what that does is it makes people feel more emotional. So sometimes good, sometimes bad, if you will. And so for those folks who are constantly saying, I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling bad, part of it is that maybe you're just going through a phase of your Earth School curriculum where you're supposed to be learning to release some of those old mental models or some of those old ways of being, right? You're not supposed to be a perfectionist anymore. You're just supposed to release control and just accept life for what it is, right? So part of it could be just being at that phase. But the other part of it could be is that maybe you have this thing that you were acculturated to believe from a very young child that perfection would be the thing that got you success or whatever, right? So you have to go back and to think about, what was I acculturated to believe as a youngster, that if I worked really hard, I would get joy, or if I was a perfectionist, I would get joy. So you might have to break the old mental model about how to kind of shift away from that. Now, another thing would be is how can you surround yourself with other people? So if you're feeling overly negative or feeling that you're making failure after failure, it's just not true, right? Their mistakes are the fastest way that human beings learn, right? So humans were not designed to learn from reading a book or sitting in a classroom. We weren't designed to learn that way. We were designed to learn through experience. And so the best way that we can do that, or to release some of those failures, Fernando, is to find a way to say, okay, I've made the mistake. How can I go talk about it with somebody, anybody? And then the humans, we're hardwired to be a social species and be around one another. And so by getting feedback continually by people around us, we feel like we're accepted. We feel like we're being coached. We feel like we're growing. And we're not just going down a spiral of being stuck in our own mistakes. So I think one of those things might help to do some releasing for us to just accept that things are the way they are.
Love it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I want to ask, why did you choose coaching of all the things, coaching in a work environment and not in a private sector, just like a life coach?
Yeah, I think what I do is kind of an interesting mix of life coaching, career coaching, executive coaching, sometimes health coaching. Kyle talked yesterday about having the International Coach Federation certification. It's something that I really did consider. I am not certified by the ICF. And the reason why is that when I was raised in Michigan in America, I was raised in a very small town of 2,500 people. And the way that life was there was that entrepreneurship was the norm. Right? That was the way of life. So I grew up in a context or environment where working for someone else wasn't common. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not today or there, but because I've been, gone for almost 20 years from that small town. But entrepreneurship was ingrained in me from a very young age. That's that level of authenticity, the level of independence, the level of being able to control what you do day to day that comes from taking risks and being an entrepreneur. So when I went to the Thunderbird School of Global Management, I followed the herd, right? I went to work for a very large corporation right after I finished the degree. And I did that for about 20 months, and it absolutely drained my soul, like in the worst way possible, right? Because I was realizing that I didn't have the freedom and the independence that I had when I was a kid working inside the family business. And so after about 20 months of working at a very large healthcare system in 2011, I quit cold turkey and started the coaching practice. And so as a coach, have I helped very large organizations with communication or with culture change? Yes, of course. But the thing that I always remembered was the independence and the control over my time that I had by not necessarily focusing in on working for some big employer. It was always about doing things in the exact same way that I wanted to do them. Now, so as we've already talked about on the show, I mix a little bit of that personal life and that professional life together, which is pretty unique for most coaches because, most executive coaches are going to go into make an executive a better leader, but they only do that by focusing on the professional side of that person. And I don't do that, right? I focus on the personal and professional concurrently to make sure that the whole of the person is developing. So for me, what I'm finding is that my client base is shifting a little bit away from big corporations, and it's actually shifting more towards independent entrepreneurial coaches or people like me who want to be able to ascend and go faster because society has changed so much in the last 18 months.
We have a question here from the audience. She wants to know where in Michigan. She lives in Michigan. That's why she's asking.
Yeah. So Michigan. Yeah. So I was raised in a very small town called Montague, which is about 1 hour to the west of Grand Rapids. And so Grand Rapids is kind of the nearest big city, if you will. And Montague is a very small town, 2,500 people on Lake Michigan. Absolutely beautiful place to be in the spring, summer, and fall. But for winter months, I'm not a fan of all that snow and all that cold. But I'm very glad to have been raised there. Taught me a lot of really important core values for the things that I am today.
I love Michigan. I've been there. I've been in South Haven, Grand Rapids, and what was the other? Saginaw.
Yeah. Yep.
Saginaw, Michigan.
Yeah. Grand Rapids is where I went to a school called Grand Valley State University, and that's where I finished my undergrad. And then Thunderbird, of course, is where I got the MBA. So I have a lot of fond memories of the western part of Michigan for not only working in the family business, but also, being able to meet some awesome people. The summers there are phenomenal, spending time on the lakes and the water. So Fernando, I'm glad you got to go there too.
He's very nice. Brian just left Grand Rapids. He was driving through Michigan.
Right on.
And
that's awesome.
He's a driver, so he was just there. So that's cool.
Cool.
One question, like what do you think has been the greatest lesson that you learned throughout, doing what you do?
Yeah, the thing that society was designed to do over the last 30 to 40 years was to separate people. And in America specifically, we've seen the increase in the divorce rate, right? And so we've seen the family unit effectively break, right, in America. And so there's been an intentional push to dissolve the family unit so that people would be much more independent and alone. And so my work is very much about fighting back against that and to make sure that people are together, right? That relationships are strong, is that we're constantly close to the people and that we're deepening relationships, because I watched society move away from a very close-knit family in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s to where in the early 80s, we started to shift intentionally to a place where, people were just independent. They were alone. They weren't doing things as part of a group. And so that's why I liked the idea of being in China so much, is that their culture was designed around this idea that family matters and that relationships matter and that we need to stay close to the people that are around us or that are meant to be there at that phase of our life. And so the mistakes that I made, especially in May of 2019, was that I attempted to go through considering suicide. I tried to do that alone. And that was a really big mistake that I made, is that I wasn't telling anybody what it was that I was going through. And I look back at those moments and I recognize now that I had to, at that moment, go through that alone to feel in the latter part of 2019, the regret of having done it alone, so that I can now remind other people that they should never navigate those moments alone. Right? Push back against the societal narrative that says that we're supposed to be independent and do things alone. There's parts of our being that are designed to be independent, like having an authentic Earth School curriculum. But we're supposed to do those Earth School curriculum things with people, always, right? And so that's the thing that I think people forget, is that we're designed to be a social species where we learn from one another. So I regret trying to do some of those things alone. I'm very thankful that I have now been able to share with others that alone is not the path. It's best to do it with people.
And do you feel that people are afraid to share their journey or ask for help? Do you think that they're afraid because they will think that they are embarrassed of telling what they're going through? Do you think that that's the reason why people don't usually ask for help?
Oh, for many people, yeah. And I think that comes back to the acculturation we receive from our parents. And so the things that our parents teach us about independence and all of that stuff, of course, that definitely does happen. And so this is the thing, is that when I'm attempting to coach someone, I always deliver a little bit of a vulnerability of myself to psychologically make them feel safe, to then offer a vulnerability back. And then that's a cycle, right? Where I offer a deeper vulnerability, then they do it. So over X number of coaching calls, I've gotten to learn an awful lot about them. So in that context, again, the trick is that you have no worries, no anxiety, no fear. All of that stuff is irrational. It is your job to tell your story, right? So the trick short term is to pick those individuals who are very emotionally intelligent, who can go back and forth on a vulnerability so that you feel safe to tell your story. Just like the writing coach helped me, right? She was able to push me and challenge me to say, what about this piece? What about this piece? What about this piece? So who are those people around you that create that psychological safety that allow for you to tell your story in small groups or to individuals, so that after 6, 7, 8 months, you can now tell it on social media or in front of an audience or at larger scale. So it just takes time, but you'll get there.
Thank you. Now yes, go ahead.
I've got a question. A lot of people don't have that example of core values and how to get them. What quick tips do you have for someone that now goes and says, what are core values? How do I know what my core values are?
Yeah. There's the website that I referenced earlier. I didn't say the website, but I referenced the company. So anywhere online, find a core values assessment or activity. There are many free ones. The one that I'm referencing is thepeakfleet.com, and PEAK, and then F as in Frank, LEET.com, thepeakfleet.com. So not only do they have the card deck, but they also have an online core values activity, which I think is $4, $5, $6. It's really inexpensive. So, but the other way to look at this is to say to yourself, and you could just print off a bunch of core values on a sheet of paper and then ask yourself really intently, when I'm making my most difficult choices, what are the values that help to inform those choices? Right? It can't be everyday decisions. It has to be my most difficult choices, right? So what are the most difficult choices that I'm making in the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months? And what are the core values that are helping me to make those choices, right? So that to me is the easiest way to do it. You could also look at it through the lens of lessons that you've learned through life, or the legacy that you want to pass on to your children or your community. One of those paths will work too. But I think doing an online activity is probably the easiest way, because it really forces you to look objectively at a set of core values and say, based on my life's work, based on the challenges I've overcome, based on the lessons I've learned, what's most important to me?
Great.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Fernando's
So-
busy writing.
Yes, I'm writing the peakfleet.com, right?
Yes.
Cool. Go ahead, Ilse. I have talked too much.
I just want to, before we finish and everything, I just want to know, where can our viewers find you or get a appointment with you and
Yeah.
get your information and everything?
Of course. So you can see my name on the screen, Michael S. Seaver. And so my middle name is Scott. So you'll go to michaelseaver.com. There are two S's there in the center. Mike Seaver was already taken and michaelseaver.com was already taken. And so it was really important to, for me to have something that really stood out. So michaelseaver.com is the place. And there are links on that website that really do allow for people to schedule time with me, whether it's 30 minutes just for a discussion, or my email address is on there. So michaelseaver.com. You can learn about books. You can learn about online courses. You can learn about other media that I've been involved with in some way. That's an easy place to be able to get it. And I think Fernando just put it in chat as well.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I'm trying to pull up your YouTube channel, but I'm having problems with my internet or my computer. It's
That's
very,
okay.
very old. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to put
There you
it
go.
in.
I think-
But the cursor is all over the show. How we usually, I just want to thank you. You have helped me a lot. I have struggled, especially this weekend, with a lot of energies and going through a lot of things and cutting out a lot of things in my life and dealing with all those things. You've helped me a lot to set that boundaries on how to communicate to people, to still be in your mission, but still set your boundaries so people do not take advantage of you. And I really, really appreciate your help and coming to share your knowledge with us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure,
Yes.
Elsa. Thank you. And Fernando, thank you. This has been a lot of fun for me, right? To go back and forth and just kind of talk about, the ups and the downs of life. And it's November of 2021, right? We're on the precipice of some really big stuff. And so in numerology, 2021 is a 5-year, which means massive change, right? So 2022, 2 + 0 + 2 + 2 is 6. So what we're going to see in 2022 is a year of healing, of love, of togetherness, of collaboration. I don't know how it's going to roll out, but I know that we're on the precipice of that. And so thanks, guys, for treating me with a lot of deep love and giving me a chance to be able to spread some seeds in the minds of the folks who follow you. So I thank you.
You're gonna get another 5 minutes, because how we end the show off, we each get a turn to share our knowledge or a snippet of something that you feel you need to tell to our viewers and everything. So I'll go first, and then Fernando, you can go second, and then you can go last and just take us out quickly.
So Ilse, go
Who's
first.
gonna press the buttons? I'll go first.
I was like,
Alright,
where's the button?
I'm telling you, and I'm like, I don't want to switch it, because then you switch and I switch, and then it's in and out the whole time. So this morning I woke up with a heavy heart, and I've actually had a very heavy energy around myself for the whole weekend, dealing with things that's going on in my life that we don't always deal with people that we meet. So we try and deal with these things alone. And I actually asked the universe to just give me a message for myself, so that I can just get that boost and carry on with what I want to do. And I went shopping downstairs where I live. They've got all these old books, and I picked up a book, and someone wrote, as you can see there, I don't know whose book this is. Someone wrote that message in the book, but I want to read it to you. It says, remember, with the right adjustments to your attitude, to your routine, or to your actions, there is nothing that you can't do. All that is required of you right now is the willingness to take the first step. So take the first step into peace in your own life and your own boundaries and setting your core values, as we learned today. Just know that do it for your own peace, as Panda says. Do it for your own peace. You guys must have a wonderful Tuesday. Thursday, Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Is
It's
it
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Yeah, it's only Tuesday.
Yesterday was public holiday, so it feels like a Monday for me.
Thank you, Ilse.
Bye, guys.
And I have shared with you guys this book. I have read it like 5 times, and I sometimes openly in a random page and I start reading. So today I want to share a part of a little thought of this book that is called "It's Not You," and it says, "When you don't get what you want, you quickly assume that it's because you don't deserve it or because you are not worthy enough to get it. But have you ever thought that it could be because it doesn't deserve you or because it is not worthy of you? The truth is that we always give ourselves less credit than we deserve. And sometimes, many times, we live in denial of what we really deserve, so we settle for what is less. There is a power much higher than us, much wiser than us, that is willing to crush our feelings sometimes so it can open our eyes to the strength that we have inside and to the reality of what we truly deserve. So, this week, guys, I want you to think of all the things that you have and make sure that you know that you have what you have because you deserve it and not because of it's a coincidence or out of luck. And know that you are worthy of happiness and all the best things in the world. So live your life and mean it and be happy.
That's a great way to say it, Fernando. Thank you for saying that. We are all worthy and we all deserve deeply. So I want to finish with a quote that I said a little bit earlier inside the recording with regards to be the person you needed when you were younger. And the simple equation that I want you to utilize as you think about how you would do that is to think about your life from birth until about age 27, 28, and what challenges you went through, and see if you can find a pattern inside the challenges. Right. So for me, working inside the family business was sometimes hard because I felt like a robot or I felt controlled inside that business. So then at age 28, what changed in your life? Now, for me, it was going to the Thunderbird School and getting a career coach who helped me to see how authentic I was. She gave me a process to understand my authenticity. So it is no secret that my business now is to help others become the most authentic versions of themselves. I had a challenge of being a robot. I was given a process to become authentic. My life's mission to unlock human potential is about how I spend time now helping others overcome the exact same challenge that I overcame when I was younger. How can you help others be the person you needed when you were younger?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ilse and Michael, for joining us today. We wish you all a good week and day. Feliz Dia de los Muertos for Mexico. Celebrate it. Always remember your family and have a good day. Thank you.